So our first panel discussion is brought to you in partnership with Hotsteiner, who've been dedicated to the success of brewers since 1845. So across Asia, the craft beer industry is still in its infancy and beset with challenges at every turn. Restrictive regulations, changing consumer demographics, issuances of provenance, logistics, staffing, and education are only a few of the obstacles facing today's startups. We've invited a panel of experts from across the region to discuss what is being done to overcome these barriers and what needs to be done to ensure the continual growth and long-term sustainability of craft brewing in the region. On today's panel, we're delighted to welcome Gautam Gandhi from Singularity Beer Project. He's a brewing consultant in India, but also spent time in Vietnam. So Gautam, welcome to today's discussion.
Hi, Charles. I'm glad I'm here, and there's a lot to talk, I guess.
Okay. Plenty to get through today. We also have Dirk Strobel, who is with Bremicon Brewing Consultants. And he's based mainly in Thailand, but has consulted in all aspects of brewing setup and operations on projects throughout Asia and Europe. Dirk, welcome to today's panel.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Nice to meet you guys. Pleasure for me.
And last but not least, John Pemberton, who's a familiar face to people who've signed into our ABN network events before. John is from Heart of Darkness Brewery in Saigon. And he's the inspiration and co-founder of the brewery and is responsible for its expansion in Vietnam and overseas. So John, welcome to this panel discussion today.
Thank you, Charlie. Always a pleasure.
Okay, so Gautam, Dirk and John, thank you very much for joining us. Let's get rolling with today's discussion group, which is today's challenges. We've quite a few topics to get through, so let's start with one of the more specific operational challenges, that of logistics. So we reached out to brewers before this panel and we asked, what are your problems? What are the issues you're facing at the moment? And with what many breweries are experiencing is supply chain logistics problems in both ingredients and equipment. So what do you see as a way through this? I mean, first of all, I guess the first person to ask would be John, because you're operating a brewery on a day-to-day business. What kind of problems are you seeing in supply chain logistics, and what are you doing to overcome them?
The major problem we're seeing is there's a lack of reefers, there's a lack of vessels, and there's a lack of reliability. I mean, you can have a booking and then it just disappears the day it's meant to ship. Oh, sorry, the vessel's not available and stuff like that. Slow steaming is a huge issue. So like we ordered key cakes. Normally key cakes take us about 2 months to get. So about a month to produce and then a month on the water to get down to us from Holland. The last shipment took 4 months to get. Key Cake did their bit fine. They got them out on time. And the vessel was booked to arrive a month later, and then they started stopping at every port along the way and slow steamed the whole thing. And then it got into Singapore, sat at anchor for I think 2 weeks, just floating at anchor, and that was port congestion apparently. And then the same thing happened when it got to Vietnam as well. So there's not really anything you can do about that because you can't predict it. So we're basically just now having to buy more stock, place the orders earlier, and now understand that we've got a 4-month lead time now to get key cakes. So basically when the last batch was on the water, we ordered up the next batch. At some point that's going to find us financially when they all turn up at once, but I'd much rather that happen than we run out of key cakes and can't fulfill the orders.
Yeah, so it's really, it's forward planning is the only way ahead. You've got to invest more money in your forward planning to get
basically
this.
It's just going to be a hit to the cash flow. But we can't disappoint the customers, and that would be an even bigger hit to the cash flow. So
yeah. And Dirk, are you seeing problems with logistics from your consulting side of the business with your customers?
Yes, I do. I definitely do, but it's not really the biggest problem from the logistic itself. It is mostly the problem from ordering the stuff. So I totally agree with John about that. It is about the time planning. It is about ordering something forward, because usually when you order, let's say, our raw materials, malt from overseas, from Germany, from America, Australia, wherever, normally they will tell you, please order right in time because it will take maybe a month longer than usual. They do that, and so you can place your orders in a much better way. Most of the customers, what I have and what I see especially on the small scale breweries, they don't do that. They just order right in time, and after a couple of months, they're standing there and have nothing. But you also have to distinguish a little bit about the bigger breweries and the smaller ones. The bigger ones have the freedom, let's say, to order directly from the source. But the small ones, they cannot do that. That's too much for them. They cannot order a whole container of malt. So they're relying on good suppliers within the country. And this is the next problem, the suppliers in the country. Very often, there is a kind of lack of knowledge about their products. They don't even know what they have to order, what they have to have in stock, how to store it, and which malt is the most common one. So it would be really good if all the customers from these suppliers would come together and make a huge plan for another year, so that the supplier can plan it in advance.
Yeah. This is certainly a topic that's been raised in the Philippines, because some Philippines brewers wrote to us and said, logistics is a problem at getting hold of raw ingredients. And one of the things that came up with our technical sessions a couple of years ago in Manila was hop supply. They were saying, look, we can't always get the hops we want. We don't, the suppliers don't have the hops we're looking for. And what it came round to was basically that the brewers weren't giving the hop suppliers sufficient advance notice. So the distributors in country, they had no idea what to order, or what quantities to order, what particular varieties to order, and we were saying the brewers need to band together. Even some sort of cooperation between the breweries to say, look, okay, let's look at 60% of our supply for the year, 70% of our supply for the year. Let's forward plan. Which I think, like your comment, Dirk, I think forward planning is probably an issue in the region, particularly with the smaller breweries, because they don't know what's going to happen in 2 months' time or in 3 months' time. But there needs, the next week as well. There needs to be some sort of forward planning going on to say, look, okay, we can't plan 100%, but we can plan 60%, and then talk with the distributors to say, look, okay, here we are. This is what we're expecting. We're expecting 60% of this. More, great, but at least we can secure a certain supply. Now, Gandhi, you're about to set up a new brewery, you were saying, in India recently, and you're looking at equipment, you're looking at, I assume, ingredient supplies as well. Are you already looking at the logistics for setting up the new brewery and supplies?
So what happens in India is like as a brew pub or a craft brewery, it's best to buy it off a supplier in India instead of like importing your malts or your ingredients directly. And then the suppliers also face an issue every year with label registrations, re-registration to get everything back into the country. So they have to explain, and also the custom officials change every year. So that re-registration process and explaining it to them that something like malt is food grain and it's classified in a custom document, like according to customs in a certain way, and it's completely permissible, is where the issue starts. And after that, we have suppliers who have a proper brewing experience, and then suppliers who are proper tradesmen. So what the suppliers who are actually proper tradesmen are doing right now is they're getting hold of brewers, trying to push old stock and importing old stock and giving a commission to a lot of brewers. So that's one of the issues. Like some breweries are not able to make good beers only because of this whole commission basis working. And then we get brilliant stuff also. But the issue is always like about re-educating the customer officials every time about what you're bringing in. Because a lot of them even get confused with hops and hops being cannabis. And the issues every time. And then at times, like a friend of mine owns a brewery called White Rhino, and he imported some Mittelfrüh like on his own from Germany, and then the custom officials tore all the packets, and we just had to distribute it amongst home brewers because of that. So that education becomes a major problem during the entry into the country because these officials keep changing all the time. And the guys who are doing proper trade, but they don't know what they're selling, is another major issue when they try to only they get into a deal to only get old stock and push it ahead. So that's one of the major issues in India.
Yeah. So I guess that ties in with the whole education thing. Is we have a job as an industry not only to educate consumers but to educate brewers to use good products. Yeah, to educate customs officials and importers, and of what needs to be done and how things need to be run properly.
Sorry, because like what they think is like if someone's making beer, they think everyone's like Kingfisher. Everyone's as big as Kingfisher or something like that. So those officials don't understand that there's different segments of craft beer. So they all deal with, oh boss, you're making beer, so you must be doing millions of dollars of business a month. But yeah. So they don't see the difference over there. They compare us with someone like Kingfisher, and it becomes really tough for us to explain, boss, it's very different.
Yeah.
What we do is different.
Yeah. So, John, on logistics side of things, I mean, you have just started brewing in New Zealand.
Yes.
Yeah. So I assume that was partially a logistics decision, was it? So look, it doesn't make any sense for us to brew in Vietnam, ship across New Zealand. Let's look at brewing in New Zealand instead.
Absolutely, yeah. And obviously Andrew Childs had something to do with that too. But yeah, it was mainly just the cost to get it down there makes it prohibitive. I mean, it's obviously got such a strong scene down there, and the price points are quite competitive across the board. So if we shipped down there, we just wouldn't have been able to compete. So yeah, Andrew approached us when they opened their own brewery and offered to do it under license. So yeah, one of the few people in the world I would trust with our beer.
Yeah. And are you brewing for other people in Vietnam as well? Are you doing the reverse? So you're going to brew for Behemoth in Vietnam or other breweries? What are you doing there? Are you giving back as well?
Yes, I mean, we would. Andrew's just got a lot going on right now as they get Charlie's settled down and he gets the brewery settled down. But we would hope that we would be doing that for him somewhere towards the end of this year, middle to end of this year, and we're doing it for Guaylo. So, I mean, that's part of. I mean, we'll come across this in another part of the topic, but part of like getting through last year was banding together, and Ian and I very early on, actually while we were locked down the first time around, sort of hatched out this plan to support each other. So, I mean, he's doing a bang up job for us in Hong Kong when they're able to sell stuff. And we're basically brewing most of their beer for the region now. And then we will start distributing them here soon. And we've already started quietly putting it out on the streets, but we'll be making a lot of noise very soon for them. Yeah.
So there is the logistics issues is a good reason for breweries to start working a bit closer together to band together when we're talking about ingredient supply or production as well. Yeah, it is a kind of a good opportunity.
It is, and it's also about economy of scale at the end of the day, right? I mean, all of us have taken a massive hit this year in terms of volume. So banding together to keep your volumes up and to keep your price points making sense definitely makes sense. I'd actually say that's more important than the logistics element.
They're just working together.
Yeah. I mean, it's like this whole situation has driven the market to a price consciousness place, right? So shipping in premium craft beers from Vietnam into New Zealand, maybe that would have flown, back in 2018 or 19 or something as a quirky little gimmick. But right now, nobody's really interested. Everybody wants good value at the end of the day. Yeah.
Which I think brings us quite nicely onto the next topic we're going to be looking at, which is pricing. Which is, I know it's a touchy topic, but because it's touchy, I think it's one that needs to be discussed and is good to be discussed. So across the board, is craft beer realistically priced to the consumer? And this would roll all the way back through the supply chain as well, because the consumer ends up getting a beer that's priced, maybe 3 times what the retailer would buy off the brewery. So it all rolls its way up through the pricing chain. So we know it costs more to produce craft beer as ingredients are more expensive. The beers are produced in smaller batches, But are some producers damaging the market, or at least slowing the speed of market development by charging too much? So one of the issues we mentioned just now is being that when beer is sold to third-party outlets, they regularly triple the price to the end consumer. So, for example, 500 mLs of craft lager might be sold at $2.70 US. We're taking somewhere like Singapore, for example, here. It would be sold at $2.70 as a commercial lager, and that would be passed on to the consumer at $8 US. So that the outlet is making a margin of $5.40 on that, roughly. If you talk about a craft beer, that's sold to the retailer at maybe about $4.70 US. The retailer then triples that, sells it for $14 or over $14, and they're making a margin of $9. So they're making a way bigger margin on craft beer. So it's almost 75% more on a craft beer than they're making on a regular beer. So they're making a nice margin, but is that impacting the growth of the product because it's so much more expensive than your average macro lager, your Heinekens and your Tigers and your Carlsberg and those beers? Gautam, do you want to have a tackle of this one? Do you think that the price of beer is too expensive in some places?
In India, the pricing completely depends on the market. For example, some place like Bangalore with a lot of brew pubs and a lot of craft beer, there's always a price war, and beers are pretty cheap because breweries are trying to compete with each other. And like some place like Delhi, which has got really less brew pubs because of the amount of permits you need to get through from the central and the state government, it's much more, you can sell it more expensive because there's not much of a competition as such. And coming to talk, when we speak about that, there's a major issue which has been happening in India for the last 12 years. So the major commercial brewers they got together and started fixing prices. And the Competition Commission of India realized that, and now they're trying to find these guys at a big scale. So that's cartel formation in India, because obviously the market should determine the price, not through a few brewers sitting together and be like, let's raise prices. So that's been an issue for the rise in prices over time in India. And I think it's completely market driven. One of the suburbs of Delhi, there's a place called Gurgaon. It falls in another state. That place has about 70 brew pubs, and most of them, I don't know what they're doing, but they even sell beers for about $0.50 a pint. So that's the reason. The way they're able to do that is just buying like 5 to 6 year old malts, and at about maybe $0.50 a kg for a base malt or something like that. And that's actually really ruining the industry in certain places. But the major issue is the bigger brewers coming together and forming these cartels and ruining things for people.
Yeah. And Dirk, up in Thailand, I've noticed over the years the price of craft beer has significantly come down. Do you think that is a realization that the market isn't willing to pay such a high price, and they're trying to find where's a comfortable place to charge beer at?
Yeah, because they really have seen that these amazing prices a couple of years ago were not able to sell anything. And you have to understand that our craft brewers, our small breweries, they're not permitted to sell their beers outside their own premise. So what they did is they went to the OEM breweries abroad, Vietnam, Cambodia, even up to Taiwan. So they brewed it there, which was quite expensive, and then they imported it into Thailand, which was even more expensive. So they had no other choice than having a huge price. But of course, the retailers or the gastronomy saw that and say, okay, it doesn't make any sense for us when we have a lot of beer in stock and nobody takes it because it's much too expensive. So they said, okay, our margin will be a little bit slower, a little bit smaller, but at least we can sell something from that. And the craft brewers did a good job with that, because they told them, please don't sell our beers on that high price. We want to sell. We don't only want to show it.
Yeah. So, John, you are, I guess your beers are some of the more expensive beers in the available on the market.
You said I'm destroying the market.
No, not at all. But yeah, what is your take on this? Because I mean, I see you brought out beer now, which is not your top range, so it's not packed full of as
Right.
much hops, or it's a lighter style beer. Yeah, what's your take on pricing in general in the market?
I think it's really depends what the brewer is setting out to do, right? I mean, we didn't set out to make cheap beer. We never wanted to make cheap beer. I don't put constraints on the brewers around what they spend on making a beer. We've always taken the approach that we'll be a beer-led organization, and we're here to thrill and excite the customer. So we're here to push the boundaries to make beer that makes you rethink what beer should taste like in a region which hasn't been exposed to craft beer. And that's not a cheap proposition. I mean, we're in a country where we import the brewers, we import the kit, we import all the raw materials, we pay heavy taxes on that. And also, I mean, your Singapore example, you're forgetting that in that, well, you won't be forgetting, but like you have to factor into that initial number out of the brewery, you've got like 100% tax, right? Going into Singapore, roughly 70 to 100%, right? It goes to the government. And we, it's the same thing here. We end up with like a 39% special consumption tax that goes to the government. And I sit on both sides of the equation, right? So we have the brewery, and then we have the two bars, one in Singapore and one here in Saigon. So I know what the running costs for those are. And if you're going to do craft beer, you can choose to do cheap and cheerful plastic stools and tables if that's what you want to do. But and you can sell cheap beer if that's what you want to do. But that's not who we are. So we have
so we've just lost your feed there, John.
Really nice tap room trained staff, well-paid managers. We're back. Hello.
Yep. Hello. Yep.
Oh no.
Just about got you.
Yeah, you got me now.
Yeah.
Where did you lose me?
Yeah, you're just talking about the cost,
Okay.
the cost
So
of
what did
running.
you lose me?
There. Hello, can you hear us?
Right. So, I mean, it depends on what you want to do. You can cost out and sell high price beer, right? So, and I mean, for me, what we're here to do is we're here to bring craft beer to Vietnam and share that passion and infiltrate the market with something that we truly believe in, that we want to share with the local Vietnamese. So how do you do that? And then you just got to pick which segment you're targeting. And we're not targeting the price conscious people. I'm targeting the guys that don't look at the price column on the menu, right? Yeah. The guys that want to come for that wholly American experience and come to a full on, I mean, I can't tell you how many people have said to me, wow, I feel like I could be sat in San Diego right now, in a tap room in San Diego. And that's exactly what we were trying to create for the Vietnamese. This is what craft beer is about. This is what the experience is about. These are the flavor profiles you can have. And yeah, that costs us a bit more than it would cost in the States, because hops are a damn sight cheaper in the States, malts are a damn sight cheaper in the States, and experienced brewers are a dime a dozen, right? So in fact, there's a underemployment issue for the brewers over there, right? So we're facing a whole bunch of different challenges. So we've just embraced it and just like, okay, this is who we are, this is where we're going. But we still sell at what is normally the prevailing market rate here. We're not more expensive than most people. But the problem is that we never discount as well. And we made a hard, fast rule on that because we never want to cheapen the brand. We never want to make the brand feel like a bargain brand. But now people are panicking because of COVID. And we've not dropped our prices. We've still stood by that. We've not discounted. And I mean, we'll do package deals sometimes at the bar, but we never do it for distribution. But now where everybody's panicking and everyone's doing buy one, get one, or buy three, get one, and all of that. And to me, that is the danger. Because that's where you start, you know that they're not making money, you know what their margins are, you know they're selling it just to clear and like clear the stock and get the cash flow moving. But what's that saying to the market? How's that educating the consumer? So now you're saying, oh, so that expensive beer, that wasn't really expensive. It was cheap. You just conned me all that time. But that's not the truth, because it's not cheap.
Yeah, there seems to be a division in the market in Korea at the moment, in South Korea at the moment, because several of the craft breweries have moved into the convenience stores. But in doing so, they've taken So the commercial beers were selling, what they call 3 for 10. So three 500 ml cans for 10,000 won, which is about $10 US. The craft brewers have gone in. Some of the craft brewers have gone in, and they said, okay, well, we'll match that. And then one of them is actually about to come in and go, we'll do 4 for 10.
That's
So
a race to the bottom.
yeah, so some of the brewers are going, yeah, how do we compete with this? How do we compete with another brewery going into convenience stores at this kind of price? What message is that sending to the market? And I think you have to have all levels. In the market, you have to have all levels. And my message to the brewers who were worried about this is like, just stick to your guns. You are a premium brand. Stick to your guns. There will be other brands who will come in at a lower rate. Okay, let them come in at a lower rate. They've got to produce big volumes, and use that to let them open up the market for you. Let them. It might be a way of introducing new people to craft beers. As long as they're producing good beers at that price. If you can produce good beers at such a low price, you've got to be pumping out some serious volume. Dirk, has anybody successfully launched a brand and kept the brand going in Thailand, which is a high-level craft beer brand? Have you seen?
Not yet, but at the moment there are many actions to do so. So with the opening of the first OEM brewery in Thailand, things are changing already and will change in the next 1 or 2 years for sure. Now we have quite a long queue from craft brewers who's standing in there and asking for their first test brews and if they could do that. This is a movement where I say, okay, they might be really successful in going into retail trade with cans, with bottles. And this is a way how they can avoid having an industrialized license. Because in Thailand, we have 2 kind of licenses. The industrial license, 1 million hectoliters up of capacity, and the brew pub. But if you have the brew pub with 1,000 hectoliter yearly capacity, then you are only allowed to sell at the premise. And you have no chance to go into retail trade. And with the OEM inside the country, that would be the perfect solution, because they will take over all of your documents, all of your licenses. You can sell your beer under your name. It's just written on the side, under supervision and a license, and so on. And then you can go there and you can really, if you're marketing on the product, because marketing is forbidden as well in Thailand. If your marketing on the product works a little bit, and if your product has a good quality, you will definitely have a chance to sell your higher priced product on the retail trades. I'm looking very positive in the future.
So you think that's going to be a good development in Thailand?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
But we have only one brewery, and this brewery was more or less born because we have so much problems with beer brewing in Thailand. And now, even with COVID, when all the borders are completely locked and you cannot bring your stuff here and there, it's very difficult logistic wise. So this is the best solution what you can have for the next years. Huh?
That's exciting to see. Exciting to watch the developments of the brewery and see what happens.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
It'd be exciting to watch the developments and see what happens if it does have that impact in the market in Thailand.
Yeah.
So we have a question just come in from James up in Hong Kong, and it's with regard to pricing and non-alcoholic or low alcohol beers. And his question is, with the rise of non-alcohol beers, how about the price points towards that? Will consumers drink more if it's priced the same as a 5% pale? Or do we need to be looking at non-alcohol and low alcohol beers being cheaper than your standard beer? So Gautam, do you have low alcohol coming into the market in India?
We have a lot of non-alcoholic beers coming into the market, and generally it's like working lunch or something. They'd want to go for it, but they're priced much cheaper in India because they don't need to go through the regular channel of liquor stores, or they don't need to pay those taxes for alcohol as such. So it's much cheaper compared to other beers, like to proper beer. And another issue, what like a lot of bottled beer faces in India is when you come out with a new brand and you go to the liquor store to like the retailer to sell it, they all expect you to sell 1+1. It's a habit which was created by like the big major commercial brewers because they're huge on volumes. So they give the liquor stores also 1+1.
Hmm.
So they even expect that for a new brand to do that. So a lot of people lose a lot of money during that entire process.
Hmm.
So obviously because of that 1+1 deals and all, there's no cold chain and so on. And non-alcoholic beers won't face that challenge because they can be sold anywhere.
Yeah. But the problem with being low alcohol is you lose that shelf stability, don't you? So is there a worry that those kind of beers would go off very quickly, that the consumers would be picking up low alcohol craft beers that haven't been pasteurized, that don't taste good, and then think that that's a good beer, or just go, oh, I don't like that, I'm not going to drink it. So then again, slow down market development.
I think the margins are high with non-alcoholic beers because they are priced around the same price. Like something like a Hoegaarden Zero is about 120-30 rupees, and now Hoegaarden's made in India also. So it's the proper one is also about 130 rupees for the thing. So they do sell a lot, but I really wonder who buys them because I haven't seen many people drinking those non-alcoholic beers around me. But I definitely see them at all grocery stores all the time.
Yeah. So they say they sell a lot.
Yeah. It looks like they do sell a lot because you see them around.
Yeah.
But I've never had anyone drinking that around me. So
yeah. But our craft or our convenience stores a bit of a double-edged sword. I mean, John, I know you've just gone into convenience stores recently in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Have you seen good sales through convenience stores, or did you see that initial first big order as they push them out to all the stores, and then they've gone, oh well, actually they're not moving that quickly? I mean, are they moving fast? Are your beers moving fast through convenience?
Yeah, I mean, it's that typical sales curve, right, where you get that first surge when you're new on the shelves, and then it kind of wanes a little bit. We're now in the second month of it ticking back up. And we're getting, and the other thing with getting into supermarkets and convenience stores is it's not an overnight process, right? It's they're a completely different beast. It's not an emotional sale. You go into a bar, that's an emotive sale. You go into a convenience store, you meet a buyer who doesn't really care about your product at all. All they're concerned about is this something that will look good on the shelf, attract the customer, and am I going to turn enough like revenue on this square meter of real estate? That's their only concern, right? So it's they take a while to get into, but once you get into them, the volume moves. You don't make as good a margin on it, but you make up for it in the fact that you're moving volume, which means that you can move more containers to other countries. You can rotate your stock faster, and you can move your cash flow quicker eventually, because that's the other problem with them, right? You've got 90-day payment terms instead of 30-day payment terms. And so the distributors normally want supporting on that, which I think is a completely fair request. Otherwise, they're carrying quite a heavy financial burden for a long time. So there's a lot to it. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth doing. And the reason we did it was back to the price point. Is it's a way to get our beer out there to the customer at a cheaper price point without damaging the brand, because that's not the taproom experience, right? That's the 7-Eleven experience. It's the same product. Canning is obviously a cheaper way to go anyway, so it just gave us a way to hit that sort of mid-tier pricing without compromising the brand. And beer was a way to hit the upper end of the lower pricing as a sub-brand, and with a hope that we'll also become a gateway beer for people to come and try the rest of our range.
Yeah. And do you work with the convenience stores to select certain locations that you think the beer would do better in? I mean, there's really no point putting a high-end craft beer out into a provincial convenience store, is that where people just don't have the money to go spending on high-end beers. Do you work with the stores to select the best locations?
They actually do that here themselves. They know they've been testing it for a few years. I mean, Pasteur and East West have been in for nearly a year now. So the stores have got a fairly good idea. We're on month 5 now. So that, when we got to them, they already had a fairly good idea of what worked, what didn't work. But we do see the sales broken down by store, so we can actually see which ones are doing better than the others. Yeah. But we have very little control over it.
Right. And just quickly back to the no alcohol, low alcohol question. Do you feel that those beers should be priced lower than regular beers? What's your thoughts on that?
No, I mean, we've done a lot of research on this and a lot of costing exercises on it. And at the end of the day, my understanding is there's only a few ways that you can actually make it. And all of them basically start with the same process as making regular beer. So your expenses and your costs are all the same. At the end of the day, they're actually higher because, like if you want to do a membrane filtration, for instance, your entry level cost on that's going to be probably about 130,000 just to land the membrane machine into Vietnam and get it set up. So imagine how much non-alcoholic beer you're going to have to sell to pay that off alone, just that single investment. And then here in Vietnam, because it's 0.5%, they're still taxing it the same. So it makes zero difference at all. And that SCT tax is not ABV. It's not a scale on the ABV. It's just a flat 39% on everything. So at the end of the day, it will cost us more to make an alcohol-free beer than to make a regular beer. Until the day that those genius scientists work out how to make yeast spit out something non-alcoholic instead of alcohol, then it's a no-brainer. But again, you're still going to have the same costs.
Yeah.
Still the same product, right? At the end of the day, you're just taking the alcohol out of it.
So that comes, I think our next topic is going to be consumer education, but then that comes down to educating the consumer that just because there's no alcohol in there doesn't mean that it's cheaper to produce. I mean, you do save on alcohol tax where you have countries that have sliding alcohol taxes. You do save on the taxation side of it. So I guess that would be something that you'd be able to use to change your pricing point.
Yeah, absolutely. Across the region for sure.
Yeah. So we've got a question coming in. Sorry, James, I hope that answers your question for you on the non-alcohol beers. We've got another question coming in from somebody who obviously knows that I'm stuck in the UK at the moment. They said, can you share how the transformation has been in the UK from craft being priced more premium 3 to 5 years ago compared to now, where it's so much readily available in Tesco's at a price that doesn't hurt the wallet so much? What have craft brewers gained from that, and has that hurt the craft beer in general? Just my quick take on that. Supermarkets, I do buy some craft beer from supermarkets, but I make sure I check the date on them. That's my take on it, and I've also taught the kids to as well. So if they're going to go and get daddy a craft beer from the supermarket, they're going to check the dates on it before they pick it up, because there's a lot of older beer, there's a lot of stale beer in the supermarkets. But I think a lot of people don't realize that it's old and stale and drink it anyway. And a lot of consumers aren't trained in sensory perceptions. They're not trained in analyzing the beer, so they're quite happy drinking those beers. They seem to move quite well in the supermarket. Yeah. And I don't think it's hurt the image of craft in any way. I think what it has done is made craft breweries really focus on an image through their tap rooms, a perception of craft beer through their tap rooms. The feeling is when you go into a tap room, it's something special. So you can drink the beer at the supermarket or from the supermarket or from the craft beer stand in your local convenience store. But when you go to the brewery, you go to a tap room, you have a whole different experience, and you have a much better experience of that tap room. And I think that comes back to John's point, that you can put your beers at a more economical level. Not super cheap, because the craft beers in Tesco's are still priced higher than the regional breweries beers. So I guess your Marstons, your Buxton, these kind of breweries, they're priced lower than you have your independent craft is priced a little bit higher. So there is still that price differentiation, which was one of the things that the Korean brewers are worried about, because there isn't a price differentiation between mass commercial and the smaller craft breweries. So that maintains that price differentiation. I assume, John, that there is that price differentiation in Vietnam between you guys and Saigon Special, or so one of the larger beers. But I think you've really got to focus once you do go into the supermarket, you view that as mass market. It's a gateway to your product. It's a gateway to craft in general. But then you have to create these great experiences when people come to find your tap room, they come to visit you. Yeah, and that's what you've really got to focus on once you do that.
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, I see the supermarkets and the convenience stores as marketing frontage as well, right? That's getting you out in front of the mass consumer. Like a lot more people will see the brand on those shelves than they would if we just stuck it up on Facebook, for instance. But I think the other thing to consider here is, I mean, that's actually quite a good comparison when you're talking about the local British breweries. So they're making like traditional bitters, which are very low hops, very low malt bases. I mean, you're talking about what? 3.5% beers, right? With maybe a small bittering addition and maybe a small late addition later on. But then when you're talking about big hoppy craft beers, that's a whole different story. And then those are also breweries that have been around for hundreds of years and have got well-established distribution channels and have built up massive volumes. And the cost per liter, I mean, I think it was you that told me that most breweries break even around 300,000 liters a year, right?
It was 30,000. 30,000? No, yeah, 300,000 is right. Yeah, 30,000 hectoliters.
It's 30,000.
No, it's 30,000 hectoliters.
So yeah, there we go. So at 300,000 liters, you're breaking even, right? At 4 million liters, your price point versus that craft brewery that's trying to break into the market is very, very different. Your internal profit margins are very, very different, right? And the scale of your operation is very different. And brewing, I mean, it will take me as many people to run my brewery at 300,000 liters as it will to run it at 1 million liters. Right? Just automate it and make it run more efficiently. So you've got better profit margins on it. So it's not always apples to apples. And then the guys that are in the supermarkets in the UK, I mean, they're cranking serious volume. Yeah. Right. So and then off the back of that volume, they're then selling to the on-trade at the same normal prices, but their cost per liter is significantly reduced. So they're making better margin on their own kegs, and they're just using that to churn out the volume into the supermarkets.
Yeah. I guess one of the advantages of supermarkets in the UK as well is they're freezing cold.
Yeah, but there's no cold chain in the UK. So so that shocked me when I went home. I thought we should be like the bastion of how to do it right in the UK when it comes to beer. I was like, my friends all looked at me like I had two heads. It's like, what do you mean there's no cold chain? I just expected it. And you can say England's cold, but you go into an offie in the middle of December, it's going to be 32 degrees with the central heating blasting, right? How many days
someone sitting behind his desk?
Yeah, right. I mean, how many days is that going to take to trash your beer? Probably a little bit better in the supermarkets because the ambient there is probably going to be a little bit cooler. But you still only got like a week on the shelf. You've got to be turning it that fast. I mean, we've done tests with our big hoppy beers. If I leave it out in ambient, it's not the same beer after 3 days. It's definitely not the same beer after a week. Yeah. Right. And we don't, I mean, you can pasteurize, but that's not going to impact your hop degradation.
Yeah. Okay. So that brings us on. We'll move on now to consumer education, which again is another huge issue, I think, in the industry, and particularly I'm coming from the F&B side of the industry, so that's something that's very close to my heart as well. So $64,000 question: what is craft? Okay. Do we need to define craft? Can it be defined? But also, are we wasting our time trying to define it? Well, one of the questions, I guess, is if we can't define craft as an industry, how do we explain that to the consumer that they're having to pay more money for their beer? Because the consumer just go, well, it's beer, isn't it? Well, why am I paying more money for it? So do we need to define craft? Or do we need to be, are we beating out the wrong bush by trying to define craft? Should we be looking more at educating the consumer on freshness, on provenance, on production, how the beers are made, how smaller beers are made in smaller batches, so it's more expensive to make it? What's your take on this? I mean, Gautam, we'll start with you. What do you think? Should we be defining craft?
So, like, we don't need to define it or define it. The whole thing is people should understand that craft beer itself is an expression of something local and something around. So it can change from place to place and it's always different. So the education should be in a certain way that they take pride in something being more local. and something more connecting to the regular palate. For example, India is like a massive country and food changes like every few hundred kilometers. So that should be adapted into craft for that education, for actually to get people's attention. Because right now it's all about like, German purity law. It's all about like, obviously like I love those beers, but it's about finding yourself in beer. For me, that's craft.
Yeah, so it's very much about the provenance, about the story behind the craft, about connecting people through that story, and what this particular product is and why it's different from other craft beers, from other commercial beers, the big macro beers. I mean, Dirk, what's your take on this? Because I know you Germans with your Reinheitsgebot and your what is this fruit juice in beer? What are you doing?
I'm working in a different industry now, so I respect both brewing styles. No, no, seriously, I think that the phrase craft beer had its time already. This was 10, 15 years ago, until the people were able to distinguish now, okay, this is the, let's say the old lager style, the industrialized, pasteurized, stabilized beers. And this is another beer, which is just different. We don't know exactly why, but it's all the time more bitter. It tastes different. And after a while, it came out that it was more or less nothing more than IPA. Most of the craft brewers in this area here made IPA and basically nothing else. I think now it's the time to make a big difference between industry beer and the beer. What you said before, where we pronunciated the freshness, the regionality of the beer. How is it made? I think that is very important. And then I come back now when you say about the German roots that I have on the German Reinheitsgebot. The Germans were quite clever with that. Germany, they had about 4,700 anything breweries. 90% of them are small, between 500 and 1,000 hectoliter per year. And they were not able to exist on the market. A brewer from Munich had problems to logistic-wise to bring his beer up to Hamburg or whatever. So he understood he must stay anywhere close in the region. So he used his bottle label or his can as a marketing instrument and wrote down why is this beer so special. He didn't write down the other beer is bad, because that is, in my opinion, absolutely no-go. You cannot say this beer is bad, this beer is good. He just wrote down that what about his beer is so special. And I think this is the way we have to pronounce it now, and not focus on the word craft, because this can mean almost everything, and nobody really knows what it means. Let us focus a little bit more on the specialty of that beer. The hops. Let us explain to people on our cans. We cannot make marketing, as I said, in Thailand. Let us show them on the cans what kind of hops is inside. Why is it better? About essential oils, about bitterness and stuff like that. Everybody would profit from that, in my opinion.
So is that marketing, the messaging, about the provenance of where that beer comes from, why that beer is so special, what's different about it?
By the way, for example, if you have a small scale brewery upcountry anywhere or so, of course it is difficult because you don't have the hops from regional suppliers or the malt or whatever. But why not using a little bit of rice? And you say this is made especially with original Thai jasmine rice or something like that, to show the people a little bit, to give them the feeling, this is from my region, I can be proud about that. This way it works. The small German brewers showed how it worked.
Yeah, there's a brewery up in Japan, Echigo Brewery, that make a koshikari beer, which is a type of rice, and they're very proud that they're using that rice in the beer, and they say this is a premium rice. We made this beer with a premium rice. It's a beautiful, clean, crisp lager. It is a fantastic beer. So, John, what's your take on the whole craft education, consumer education side of things?
I mean, the things that actually matter to the customer at the end of the day are boring as all hell to the customer. I mean, do they care about cold chain? Do they understand what cold chain is? Do they understand the impact of cold chain? And can they be bothered to understand it or read about it? I think the answer is no. Do they want to understand the brewing process and why, a Heart of Darkness loose rivet is twice the price of a Heart of Darkness beer? No, it's not going to make any difference to them, right? That only matters to us. So I mean, we focus on, and we don't. I'm with you guys. It's like slagging off other breweries is an absolute no-no. And getting into fights with macro breweries is absolutely pointless. We'd be dead
It's a
tomorrow.
battle you're never going to win.
Yeah, exactly. They have a war chest, and we're just getting up on our feet. So yeah, it'll be nothing. So I mean, for me, it's about focusing on being different. I mean, my pitch is always like for all your life, you've been told that macro beers are the best beers in the world, right? Because there's the marketing spend behind that is huge, and that's all about life. If you look at what they're doing, that's all about lifestyle. You know, going out with your mates, having a good time with your mates, and just associating beer with good times. But the price of that has been all the beautiful styles that craft brewers have brought back to life over the last 30, 40 years have been pushed onto the sidelines. So for me, it's how do we bring that message out? How do we bring out the message that beer isn't just about lager or pilsner? Beer is so much more than that, and it's such an interesting world. I did a tasting with this really, really cool older Vietnamese guy. He used to be the CEO of Petrolimax, like a huge state-owned company here. And it was like I think it was like a 15 beer tasting. So, and at the end of it, like halfway through it, he's just like, John, you can't call this beer. I said, well, we call it craft beer to differentiate. It's like, no, this isn't beer. This is so much more than beer. This is so much more special than beer. You've got to find a way to communicate that to the customer. Because if the Vietnamese understood what this is, you've got a completely different sales proposition.
Yeah.
So that, and I fully agree with that statement. And it's how do we position that so that we're not fighting with, I mean, for me, there's a place in the world for macro lagers. And you know, you'll find me drinking Singha on the beach in Thailand when the world's normal. And happily, I would probably pick it over Kurtz's Insane. It's a better beer for the beach. So I genuinely believe there's a place for every beer in the world. It's just let people know what we're doing over here. And like America, it became 25% of the market. Well, okay, if we're lucky, we can get that same share. If we get 10% of the market, then we've done a service to the world, right? We've reinvented all these wonderful old styles, and then we've all shared our own twists on it.
Yeah.
And you know, like people should be able to go out there and find. For me, it's about finding the beer that works for you, not the beer that you're told is the best beer in the world. Because the best beer in the world is your favorite beer, right? And you should have a chance to find it, and that's the message I wish we could communicate and get out more.
Yeah, it's very much find your place in the world.
Yeah,
and find a flavor to go with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then that flavor's always going to change. You have to understand that flavor can change. I mean, I've always wanted to run an event where, you know, maybe over 4 hours, you start with maybe some light jazz music, and you might have a little pale ale to start with your jazz music, and then you move on to maybe something a bit more rocky. So then you move on to an IPA for a bit of rocky, and then you can move some classical, and then you have maybe a barrel aged, you know, a nice barrel aged imperial stout. So you showing people that, look, beer isn't about this is one beer, this is what you got to stick with all the time. You know, this is who you are, this is your beer. You say, look, you change, your mood changes, your feeling changes during the day, different days. There are different beers to suit those different feelings, and so how do you connect that? So connect how you're feeling with the beer.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really what beer's about at the end of the day. It's a very emotive product, craft beer anyway. Yeah. Like you become loyal to a brewery, you become loyal to a style, you become loyal to a specific beer. You mess around and drink other ones, but honestly, I've got, how much beer do I have flying around me? I mean, we create like 100 plus new beers a year. 90% of the time I drink Dream Alone. It's my favorite beer. I love it. I don't see why I should move elsewhere. I associate with it. Right, it feels like it's a part of me, and how do we get that across? Because people don't have that connection to Tiger and Heineken, and well, some do, weirdos, but for the most part, it's just it's a medium that gets you drunk. Craft beer isn't a medium to get drunk on. Craft beer is an experience, and it's something to enjoy. It's something to savor. It's something that should be shared with friends, and those social situations. And that, I think, is a message we need to get out there. Is like, this isn't about getting drunk. This is about having a fine quality taste experience.
Yeah, so much harder work on trying to get that message across. So you think that's going to help the industry to educate consumers?
Yeah.
So with education, yeah, one element is consumers. The other element is brewers. Yeah, many of the region's breweries have very limited access to continuing education. And one of our listeners mentioned that it's very hard to find staff that are ready to work hard shift as brewers. So yeah, with the industry growing as quickly as it is, yeah, are you guys having problems finding people to work in your breweries? I mean, Gautam, you're involved in setting up a lot of breweries, and also Dirk as well.
People to work at the breweries. So a lot of breweries got shut, like especially ones who were competing and making bad beers. A lot of those places shut down. So I kept so I'm trying to explain to a lot of people that someone who works in a TGIF cannot come and work in a tap room because he can't connect to the people and explain what he's doing. Probably they don't even know how to clean a glass. So I've been trying to go through a lot of people, but they've learned things in a certain way. It's very difficult to make them unlearn that. So from pouring a beer to, I've been to places in India where they they have an IPA on the menu. You order an IPA, the server is going to come over and tell you that it's going to be really bitter, sir. I wouldn't suggest that. So that's very important, that as soon as you go into a place, when you order a beer, the person needs to know what kind of a beer the customer would enjoy, explain the beer, and then obviously pour it properly and then give it a help. I mean, with a proper, do it in a proper way. So it's really difficult to find people. And because the people who are obviously in the industry right now, they learned things in a certain way. So it's very difficult to make them unlearn that.
Yeah. I guess that Dirk, your experiences in Thailand. I noticed the quality of brewing significantly jumped once the brewers moved overseas. Partly, obviously, it was to do with that they were brewing on, initially they were brewing on little homebrew systems. They then moved, I'd say probably going to Cambodia was their first step, going to Kingdom, brewing up at Kingdom with professionals on professional equipment. They changed their recipes, changed what they were doing, and they've had to learn on the job how to make better beers or how to put those recipes together. How do we educate, or how do we get education to this new wave of brewers coming up to help them? I mean, well, one thing for me is off flavors. How do we? The only way to do off flavors is just to go again and again and again and do tasting sessions and off flavor sessions, just so people start understanding these off flavors and where they're coming from and how to get them out of their beers. What have you seen? What do you think what is your take on how do we educate brewers?
That's quite interesting, because I make this at the moment at this OEM brewery, what I talked about before. We offer now training courses for hobby brewers, craft brewers, or for anyone else who want to do that. I think this is the first of its kind. The first batch of training courses is already finished now. It was sold out within a couple of hours, only online marketing. So there is interest in that. What we did there, we showed them really everything from scratch. This means we started with the raw materials, about the brewing process, and we also showed about how does filtration and filling work, things which are not very common for the real craft brewers. And you can really see they were quite bored about that. But I always told them, I said, guys, if you want to know about brewing, you have to have a proper knowledge about the whole system. Not only about picking some parts what you personally like most. It's not like a concert where you are like a karaoke show. It's you really have to work hard on it. It is not easy. It took me many years to understand the system, and but this is what we're doing now, and we want to continue with that more and more now. And now at the moment only online, for the reasons are clear. But I'm pretty sure that we will start a kind of academy, live, full time, so to really educate real brewers.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly needed. I think the region, particularly Southeast Asia, doesn't have a regional academy.
Yes.
For brewers to come to start training new brewers coming in. It doesn't have to be taking them up to doctorate level of brewing.
No, of course not.
To get those basics. Yeah, to get those basics rolling.
But a little bit more detailed than the basics, because their basics they have normally from American homebrewer books, and that is sometimes, sorry to say that, sometimes very wrong, absolutely wrong. For
It
example,
doesn't translate, does it, into commercial brewing?
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I see recipes almost every day, and sometimes I say, guys, no, it doesn't work. I'm open for everything, but please no baking powder in the beer and stuff like that. You don't have to do that. And so giving the people a real basic knowledge about details. Why are they using this? And this is the same what I mentioned before for the suppliers. The suppliers should do these courses as well, because they have no idea what they have. They have beta glucanases. They don't know what to do with it. They just have it and they want to sell it, but they don't know for what and why.
Yeah.
This is our job now to, as specialists, to show them and to teach them if we want to continue successful with the craft beer movement or with the beer brewing industry in general.
Yeah. So encourage that education. Get to know more about what they're doing. Yeah. John,
Yeah.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to skip you on this one.
Sorry.
Because we're just, I just want to move it on. So we've got a couple more topics we'd like to cover. But the next topic is certainly up your street. So I'd like to bring the discussion back to a slightly broader topic. That's the current market uncertainty. So in the past 12 months, we've seen bars and restaurants closing, or at least operations are very restricted across the region. And there's been a shift in consumer demographics to a greater reliance on domestic customers, with there being virtually no business or leisure travel going on. So we've discussed in previous webinars ways for businesses to pivot, such as home delivery or greater consumer engagement. So we're not going to be covering that, here. But what successful strategies have you seen in the past few months for breweries adapting to the current market conditions?
You may kick that off?
Yeah. If you can kick that off, yeah. I mean, which breweries have you seen doing well at the moment? Because there is a lot of uncertainty in the market.
I mean, I don't think any of us are doing particularly well. Those of us that are surviving, for me, are doing well. I mean, it's been brutal. It's been, I mean, like regional, like within Vietnam, sales are massively down. I mean, we've lost probably 30% went to tourism and to business travel. I mean, and we get a lot of business travelers come in with full tables and all the rest of it. All that's gone. We've pivoted hard to the Vietnamese, but we're still dealing with basically 25% of Vietnam is either unemployed or working on half salary or a lower salary than they were before, and that's nearly a year on. So even within the Vietnamese pool, that pool shrunk a lot. And then to the earlier point, a more premium price point. So we were only targeting a certain sector, which relied on a lot of expats to be there. So that's been quite hard, but not just us, that's everybody in the industry. I mean, what's hit our bar is what I'm seeing with all of our customers as well. We ramped up our international right before COVID, and Chris did an amazing job of switching out distributors and like really upgrading our distribution network. That helped us massively. I mean, our international was up to 300%. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was massive. And then it's like whack-a-mole, right? So COVID breaks out over there. Well, it's okay over there. So we were okay shipping over there. And then when the COVID broke out over there, we were shipping over there. So it kind of helped even things out throughout the year. But that's obviously not something, it's not an easy thing to build out in the middle of a pandemic. So that's not really a pivot that most people can do. So, I mean, I think really it's a case of just making sure that you've got all your house in order, that you've got all your costs under control, that you're not being overly lavish, that all your staffing costs are in line, and that all your overheads are down as low as you could possibly do it. Get everybody doing more for less, basically. I think that's the only real thing you can do. And to the earlier points, I don't think discounting is the way forward. I mean, you want to sell twice as much beer at half the profit? Well, what's the point? You're just busy fools then. I'd rather sell half the amount of beer at a much better profit margin, not tax an already overly stretched team, and get through this. Because people are still willing to pay for it. It's just, you've got to get to the right people.
Yeah. Is this the time to re-engage with the domestic market in whichever markets you're in? I mean, obviously you're in several markets, so it's looking at the domestic markets in those markets, because obviously there isn't business, there isn't leisure. So okay, well look, let's build stronger roots for the craft beer industry in these markets, across the region. We're talking India as well, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Korea. To say, look, okay, maybe we've missed the larger domestic market by focusing on the higher end business travelers and the leisure market.
Yeah, I mean, we have doubled down on our international, and we've doubled down on our relationships there and how we make that work. But we've actually I've personally spent a lot more time on how do I rebuild Vietnam? Like, how do I get Hanoi rocking, for instance? How do I get Da Nang back up and running to a decent level? And Da Nang's been decimated. I mean, it relied purely on Japanese, Korean tourism, and that's just gone. And then after the COVID outbreak, even the local business disappeared, and it all just dried up. But there's still money to be had there. You just got to have the people on the ground to understand it. Same thing with Hanoi. And then that's that catch-22. You've got to spend money to grow that business, lose money for a while, and hope that you're going to get to where you need to get to. So, I mean, we're going to put a bar in up there so that we've got a focal point in Hanoi, and then run distribution out of there and try and really strengthen that.
Yeah. And Gautam, what are you seeing in India?
So for a very long time, like brewers in Maharashtra and a few other states have been asking for a growler policy, like beer takeaways, because like brew pubs in India also, just like Thailand, are on-premises sales. So Maharashtra during the COVID time, they started permitting growler sales online, and also you're allowed to have your own a tap station, like a growler filling station, where you can also decide on what beers you want. You can take them out and like, for example, I was just thinking of something else. So things are changing, but not at the pace like things should change. So it looks like other states are also going to follow. So right now, Goa allows that. Maharashtra allows that. UP was allowing it during during COVID and during the lockdown, but it looks like they're going to make it a permanent policy. So things are getting very progressive for the craft beer industry. And in Maharashtra, there's no middleman also. You can have your own tap room. You don't need to go through like a distributor or anyone. Yeah. And they're also allowing kegging over there. Like you can sell kegs to multiple restaurants, which wasn't allowed earlier. So during the starting of the lockdown in India, we at Singularity, we hosted a lot of programs called United with Brews, got a lot of people on board. We had a lot of discussion about how to make changes. And then I think the authorities took note of that, and then things worked out pretty well for us.
So you've managed to make regulatory changes in the last year in India. You've managed to not force them through, but persuade the government.
Like a lot of brewers got together, even if like a lot of people don't like each other, they got together for the greater good of getting the policy through and competing properly with bigger commercial breweries. And it's helping a lot. It's been on a very progressive way. And this year, the UP government, where I'm starting a brew pub, they reduced taxation on beer per liter, like bulk liter, and also made the licensing policy, which is supposed to be registered every year. So now it's once in 3 years. So it's much more simpler. The ease of doing business is getting better, because with a lot of offices like Microsoft, Samsung, and all moving to that part of the country, they're looking into craft beer because I think they want people to feel at home, whoever's moving into India, like the expat crowd.
Yeah. So that collective community action has helped to push through the regulatory changes. But what persuaded? What advice can you give to? Because there are other countries who are also struggling with restrictive regulations. What kind of advice can you give? And how did you? Yeah, there's one thing coming together as a community, but the next step is how do you get your message across to the government? Because governments typically they think about taxation. It's about money. How do you get your message across to them that this is a good idea? This helps not only the brewing community to thrive, but also it's going to be good for the government to bring these policies in. How did you achieve that? How did your community achieve that?
I think it's very important for the government to realize that the market should be free, and it should promote entrepreneurship in a better way to get more entrants in. because till now for them only like it was the big guys making the money. So now craft beer is also taxed a little higher in India, depending on like how much the production and everything. So it's always like making the government feel that, you know, things should be more fair for everyone to get into the business. It shouldn't be just like make them understand that you've been trying to favor the big guys till now, but there's a lot of job opportunities. For example, like a macro brewery employs much lesser people compared to like a brew pub or a setting like that. Show them that you're able to generate a lot of employment. Make them understand that not like the other industries which are also going to get supported with the craft beer industry. For example, like local farmers, local produce being used in the beer more. So you got to connect all dots and put it in front of the government, because they won't usually do the thinking for you. They're more than happy to continue what has been happening for a very long time and get paid for it. So you got to show like how you can, like how craft beer can actually affect the lives of many other industries and make things better for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And like job generation, etc.
Yeah. So really connect the dots for the government bodies and say, like, here we go. Here's the evidence that shows this is what it's going to do. Yeah. So I mean, Dirk, obviously, certain things we can talk about, certain things we shouldn't talk about with regards to Thailand. What do you see coming? Do you see some changes with regulations coming through there? What do you feel could be done? How could people go about making changes to regulations or requesting changes for regulations?
As mentioned before, you know, our strict draconian laws, not getting any licenses, and even if you have one, selling at the premise. And there are always rumors going around something will change soon. But to be really honest, I wait for these changes now since 20 years. Yeah. Since 20 years, these rumors going around, and they always say, now we have a group together and we do something. But when you watch the political situation in Thailand and what's going on, just a small break now from COVID again, from the new outbreak or new lockdown, but wait a couple of months and I'm pretty sure all hell will break loose again. And I don't think that the government has, or I think the government has more serious things in mind to do than allowing craft brewers to buy or get a license and sell their beers. So instead of sitting on our backs and waiting until the law is changing, the people are clever enough. They go to the OEM breweries and try to sell their beers over this area. Yeah. This is the problem. Is only the costs are still very high. So even if a craft brewer, you have to invest a lot of money to get only one batch of beer. Yeah, everything will be done for you, but you have to pay the taxes and you have to pay everything. So the really small ones, I don't think that they will have a serious chance. But the medium-sized ones, which are still operating illegally, more or less, they will have a chance. They will take a credit and they will try it with the OEM and waiting until the law is changing. But we cannot sit here just and waiting until it's changing. It will not change so soon. Yeah. You know?
And then John, down in Vietnam, do you find any of the regulations down there difficult to work with, or are you working together to try and change regulations, or what's happening with Vietnam?
Living in a socialist country, I very much doubt I've got any say. I mean, like the special consumption tax is a killer, right? I mean, that's going to kill most breweries in its cradle. I mean, 39% on everything as it leaves the brewery is a ridiculous amount of money, and you've got to stump that up before you've sold it. So you've already committed to the hops, you've already committed to the malt, you've already got all your overheads, you've already had to pay down most of that, and then you get slammed with 39% on top of that, and you've not seen a cent of your money back, and you may be sitting on that stock for a month, and then you've got to wait another a month to get paid if you're lucky, but probably in all reality another 2 months to get paid. So it's so it's pretty harsh. I wish they would do away with that, but I can't see that happening anytime soon. At the end of the day, government's money too, and they're trying to discourage, just like Thailand. I mean, they're trying to actively discourage the consumption of alcohol. Vietnam at the start of last year put in a new law around marketing, and that started to really bite this last 6 months with them cracking down. And they shut down our Facebook accounts and they shut down our Google accounts because we were supposedly promoting beer. Well, we weren't promoting beer, but it's how you walk and how you do it. But how do we get our message out if we can't market, if we can't talk about beer? Same deal in Thailand. How the hell do you get your message out?
Yeah.
Right? If you get
It's
a
even India.
$6,000 fine for marketing, all right, okay, you can have the best product in the world, but nobody knows it's there.
Yeah. And how did
That's
you
what I
get
was saying.
around?
Sorry. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Gautam, you first.
Okay. How did you get around those regulations once they shut down your Facebook and marketing? Was it talking, engaging with the government departments, or?
That's what happened in India. So the Foster sells water to market Foster beer.
That's the same in Thailand, isn't it? With Leo
Exactly.
and
Yeah, Chang and Singh both do water for the same reason, right? We have pivoted to other channels, found other ways to market, found other ways to reach the customer that aren't as draconian. Ollie's done a great job cleaning up a lot of stuff for us and streamlining our marketing. But we had to bring people in to do it so that we could do it effectively. And then it's just, I guess it's the end of the day, it's word of mouth and getting out there and pounding the pavements again and getting the brand placement out there and getting into the supermarkets and getting into the convenience stores. We market the bar really heavily now as a restaurant. We went and got a really kick-ass American chef, upgraded our food offering, just turned the bar into basically a very good restaurant. So come for the food and discover the beer. Because otherwise we just can't get it out there. I mean, every picture of meat platters and everything, of course, has decorated with Heart of Darkness beers. But now my concern is, do people actually understand who we are now? Have we confused the message? Are we no longer a beer bar that fronts a brewery? Are we a restaurant that has interesting beer?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So again, it's bringing in people who understand that side of the business, because you've got a brewer who understands the brewing. Yeah, you have your operations team that understand how to run an outlet, and then you go, okay, well, we need to then bring in somebody who understands marketing, understands regulations, understands the messaging that we need to get out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sorry, Dirk. Yeah. Dirk, you were going to say something. You had something.
Yeah. Okay. Pretty much the same. I ran over 20 years long brew pubs, and at the beginning you could do almost everything, and later we even had to take the pictures of the beer on the menu away.
Oh, wow.
And our brewery was called Holland Beer, which is now closed since last year. And the Holland Beer, the name beer, the phrase beer, we had to take stickers over it because it was even forbidden to mention the word beer. You do something illegally when you post with a beer where you can read the brand on it on Facebook or on any other social networks. So they even made a kind of a climate of fear. I mean, everyone went through their Facebook accounts and checked and deleted all the pictures. And then you find out that 90% of your pictures is with a beer in your hand. And
even if you just
want to say, it's the only chance what you can have. Let's say you have a beer can or a label. Try to make your marketing on it. It's the only way. Don't make a marketing like John said it inside his restaurant.
Yeah. Okay. Well, guys, we're gonna wrap up now because we've gone on longer than we promised, but it's been a fascinating discussion. But before we wrap up, we've asked our panelists to look into their crystal balls and give us their predictions for 2021. So let's have it, guys. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen in 2021? Gautam?
What I'm hoping is my brewpub starts and the laws favor us a little more and it's actually getting a little more progressive. So I'm looking at a bright 2021.
Yeah. So you're looking forward positively.
2020 gave me a lot of time for innovation and developing new recipes. So it looks like it's going to be a good year.
Great. Good to hear. Nice and positive. Dirk, what are your predictions for 2021?
Since last year, since we were all in lockdown and stuff, and we had a lot of time left, I used the time to make training sessions for the people who want to continue with brewing. I also heavily invested in a private brewery project, and I hope I get the fruits out of the next years. That's for myself. For the whole business, I hope that the really good breweries will survive. If we have a 10 or 15 or even 20% breweries will die off, I see it more or less as a natural way, but I hope that the good ones and the guys, the breweries who invested heavily, that they will survive. And I hope the best. And I think OEM is the name for the future for small scale breweries.
Okay, and is that just Thailand, or do you think across the region? Because we are seeing a certain amount of that across the region. In Vietnam, some of the smaller breweries are.
I don't know all
larger
the markets,
volume.
of course. John knows the Vietnamese market much better than me, and Gautam the Indian, of course. But I think you can see it in general a little bit. Yes, I think you can do that. Yeah.
So taking the opportunity of a bit of downtime in the market, as it were, to say, right, okay, let's reevaluate, let's work on education, let's get that next generation of brewers. So once things do pick up again significantly, people are trained. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. And John, finally, what are your projections for 21?
I think more of the same, actually, until probably Q3. I can't see, I mean, great news coming out of the US yesterday that 1 dose of the vaccine will create herd immunity. Very happy for India that they reached it. But for Vietnam, I can't see vaccines until Q3. Singapore, probably in Q2, right? Hong Kong, they're talking about Q3 as well. And until the vaccine's out there, we're not going to see the locals come back out again. I don't think that foreign travel is going to come back before the end of this year. If it does, it'll just be like business people and just a few intrepid business people at that. So I think Thailand's going to be down massively. I mean, you just walk around Saigon right now, 2 out of every 3 shops are shut. And I've heard the same thing in Bangkok. It's going to take a long time to rebuild that. I mean, we've probably, total as an industry, how many of our customers have we lost? I mean, how many bars have gone down? How many restaurants have gone down? What does that look like? I'm absolutely confident that early next year, the people with money will find the people that know how to run F&B, and they'll work on projects together, and new F&B outlets will come up. And this pandemic's been following the 1918 pandemic almost to a T, right? And the good news on that is that on the back end of the 1918 pandemic was the Roaring Twenties. So I'm sincerely hoping that the Roaring Twenties happen again in the 2000s. I'm confident they will, actually, because I think we're social creatures at the end of the day, right? We need to be together. We need to socialize together. So I do see it coming back, and I believe in pendulum swings as well. So we've gone so heavy in a negative direction. I think when all this is over, there's going to be this huge collective global sigh of relief, and people will get out there and enjoy each other's company again and just want to be with each other. So I think it's really a case of keeping everything really trim through this year, staying smart, protecting your cash, and expecting the unexpected. I think Q3 we get to walk out into the sunshine again.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there's a very positive aspect for the industry is once people do start coming out, once international travel does start, it is exactly the customer profile that matches craft beer.
Yeah,
it's middle class, it's higher income earners. Those are the people who are going to be moving. Those are the people who are going to be going out. Those are the people who are going to be celebrating. So I think we need to get ready for that. The industry needs to take this time to make sure that we're ready for that. We've got great products out there. We've got great messaging out there. We take the time to educate people, so when they do come out en masse, we're ready to grab hold of them and say, here you go, here's something new.
Yep, that's exactly what I was doing yesterday, actually. Yesterday I was planning out, underneath the surface at all, we've probably got 3 or 4 times the volume that we're working on right now, just in the network that we have, in the outlets that we have, let alone what gets built and what opens up again. So I'm right now planning out the expansion for the brewery in preparation for 2022, because the last thing I want to do is be caught short at the time when we can be making good money again, right? And make up for all these losses. And just get everything in order and be ready for it, because it will come. I'm 100% convinced that next year will be a phenomenal year, and we're all just going to be running ragged, just trying to keep up with it all. So you use this downtime now to be ready for it.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. It's all positive messages. Keep positive. Keep brewing great beer, and wait for if you brew it, they will come. Well, We'll bring the session to the close now. Thank you very much to our panel for joining today. Thank you, Gautam, joining us from India, Dirk from Thailand, and John from Vietnam. Thank you all for tuning in, and also for your input. We had some questions come through. Some very good questions came through for the discussion to help us on our way. Finally, thank you to our presenting partner, Hopsteiner. Thank you for supporting this ABN Talks discussion session.